Hi there, everyone. Perhaps more than anything else, what I love to feature on our channel are patriots who are standing up and building a parallel patriot society that provides a viable alternative to all the woke insanity in our companies and institutions out there. My guest today is doing just that. Please welcome Dave Stoltzfus. Dave is one of the founders of the Lancaster Patriot, which is a grassroots newspaper that's sharing the true news of what's happening in one of the more conservative regions in the nation there in Pennsylvania. The Lancaster Patriot is also a sponsor of our upcoming movie premiere for my new movie, The Return of the American Patriot, The Rise of Pennsylvania, which we're going to be premiering on July 16th in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I know a lot of you have gotten tickets for it. We've had to get an even bigger venue than we started. And we're going to be talking to Dave on how he's been busy canceling cancel culture and building a parallel patriot economy. So welcome, Dave. Great to have you here.
Nice to have you. Thanks for having me on the show.
You bet.
Really appreciate it, and appreciate the opportunity.
I love the name Stoltzfus. I see it all over Lancaster. I mean, you obviously got some roots there, yeah?
Yeah, right around 8-9 generations. So it's a few generations here.
Man. So
yeah,
you're the
my background is Anabaptist. So I've only been in the Reformed faith for about 10 years, 12 years now.
Okay. So Anabaptist is in terms of Amish?
Correct.
Yeah. Neat. Right. Wonderful. Yeah, it's so funny. I met a fellow who was a former Amishman. I'm sure you know him, a mutual acquaintance. But I said, "Do you still consider yourself Amish?" Because he has the beard and everything, but he drives and so on. Mm-hmm. And he says, "Well, once Amish, always Amish. It's that kind of thing." I said, "Well, here we can end the controversy right now. I'll determine exactly whether or not you're Amish or not. How many kids do you have?" Without beating an eye, he said 10. I said, all right, you remain Amish. In my book, for us English, you are still Amish. That's great.
Yeah, so 10 of them, yes.
10 of them, yes. That's yeah. That's the thesis. The religious are going to inherit the earth is by Eric Kaufman of the University of London, who's arguing basically secularists have stopped having kids, whereas conservative Christians are having more kids than ever. So there you go. We're going to, the future is ours. So speaking of, tell us, just give us a bit of a quick backstory. How did you start the Lancaster Patriot?
Well, I grew up here in the county. I wasn't always in the position that I'm in right now as far as holding conservative values and things like that. But over the past 10, 12, 15 years, I guess it is almost 15 years, with studying the Reformed doctrines, looking at Calvin, Luther, and Spurgeon, and a lot of their things, it really opened my eyes that there is more to the gospel and more to God's word than simply something for me. It opened my eyes, and I realized that it had to do with everything, right, including commerce, everything, arts. There's nothing outside of God's realm,
right? And
it's all His. And either you will bow the knee today, or you will bow the knee when you pass on from this world. And so I came to that realization, and I wasn't there immediately. It took me a long time to get there. It was people like Paul Washer and people like Lodi Backham, and then Dooney, Rush Dooney, and many others who by reading, listening to those things, I came to this realization that God was, in fact, the supreme king, ruler of this earth, and that we would at some point in our existence, whether it's here on earth or in eternity, acknowledge that.
Right.
So that was kind of the crux of where I was at. But then, for the past 10 years, I'm not an activist. I'm not a a person who wants a high falutin job. I don't want to be at the top. I want to simply go to work, provide a service to the people that I come in contact with. And at the end of the day, I want to come home and I want to sit in my back porch and I want to look out over the countryside. I don't want this controversy. I really don't. I'm still a pacifist at heart. From my Anabaptist upbringings, I still have a lot of that. So I've never wanted to be this person who was in the limelight or who was in the spotlight, or a person who was trying to be an influencer. But a few years ago, things changed. As most people know, I met a gentleman at a conference, and he tried to, he put this idea in my head that media was the problem, and that media was influencing the demise of America. And so he started a platform. He said he doesn't want anything to do with it. We took over, free and clear, no splits. There was nothing. There was no partnership or nothing, because I had refused to work with this gentleman. And with that came some controversy as we were attempting to open up in 2019. I'm going to take a step back here. So my wife, who ran the newspaper for approximately a year, she was the one who said, she was the deciding factor in saying, let's stay here. Because one of the things over the past 4 or 5 years, seeing how things were progressing, how the county is becoming more liberal, and I don't want to use liberal as a point, because I think that demeans people when you say liberal. I guess what I mean by that is the county has become more of a, trying to think of the word. Liberal is not the word, because I don't like when someone says I'm a conservative. I would prefer to be called a Christian. So Lancaster County has become more and more in line with the rest of the nation, more and more in line with Jersey, New York, and other metropolitan areas around us. So it no longer holds the core Christian values or the core values that Lancaster County was founded upon, especially that my ancestors built when they came here. So my point was, let's get out of here. Let's find a small place somewhere in the middle of nowhere and plant a garden and have a beef cow and live our life. But my wife always said that, while we were having these discussions, that we needed to stay. We needed to stay, and we needed to stand up for what we believe in. Because, and this is why, I have been saying this for many years, that I'm disappointed with the generation from 1930 to 1970, in that they would not stand up as the policies came through, as the Great Depression and then the socialist programs came through. They didn't stand up. The men then went to war in Europe. They came back, and everything they fought for, they didn't have that same feeling here in the United States. And so as we progress from the early 1900s, and we have the liberal, again, I'm using this term that I don't like to use. We have the movement from 1900, and the women's movements, and all of these movements going through up until the 1970s, I think, is what has set us up for this. And I always said, if I'm upset at anyone, I'm upset at those generations for not standing up against socialism. because they
Right.
were the ones that had that opportunity.
Yeah, I guess as opposed to liberalism. Well, you could think secularization. I mean, this was the
That would be a better
very,
word.
yeah, it's the very deliberate, definitive secularization of the nation. Prior to 1940, the Supreme Court used the term separation between church and state, which is not even in the Constitution. It's in a letter
Correct.
that Jefferson wrote to the American Baptists in Connecticut, if I recall. They used it just a handful of times prior to 1940 in their decision. After 1940, they've used thousands of times. So something happened in 1940, whatever it is, that just seemed to switch this paradigm. But I wouldn't mind. I mean, again, when you're dealing with people and not wanting to be offensive, that's a whole different thing, no question. But just aerial view, and their liberalism is an inherent project in that, because now that we're secularized, now that's what we're committed to, then we are morally obligated to, quote, liberate, emancipate populations from the traditions, customs, and cultures rooted in the Christian religion that we now deem to be oppressive. So that's where the liberalism comes in. And that's where, yeah, I agree with you. The generations of those decades, they were just clueless. They didn't know how to fight this stuff.
Correct. And that was what I always said. I said, I'm disappointed that my father, I'm disappointed that my 80-year-old neighbor, and I'm disappointed that these people did not stand up in the early stages, that they didn't stand up for government education and say, no, we don't want it. We want to teach our children ourselves. So those are the challenges that I was talking about, that I was saying for these past 5-6 years. So my wife said, you're going to run, the same problem you're having with your parents, and you want to run.
Right.
What's your son going to say? What are your children going to say? And it was a gut check. It was I can't back down. At this point, the gospel must be proclaimed. At this point, we must fight it on all fronts, whether it's business, whether it's arts, whether it's media, whether it's whatever it may be. And I can't back down. So that brings us then to 2019, and then the riots in Lancaster, which were in late 19, and then a shutting down for 6 months, because I will say this, we stepped into it not knowing what we were getting into.
Right.
We didn't have an idea what we were getting into. So then opening up in March of 2021, obviously there was a lot of hate on both sides. There was hate for us for shutting down. So I know what the recipient, I have been the recipient of hate on the right for shutting down. I have been, the recipient of hate on the left for starting up. And I understand that we will never make everyone happy. There is no way to do that. There's no possibility of that in today's world. But that doesn't mean that we need to cancel people and that we need to turn these other people into inanimate objects. Things like alt-right, white nationalism, anti-Semitic, Antifa. We don't need to turn these people into inanimate objects, because these are people. These are people who will one day die. These are people who many of them have yet to understand the gospel, or many of them have yet to understand what their eternal destination is. So I think it's very important that when we look at these things leading up to today, which we can get into a little bit later here, but leading up to today, I feel that we need to quit dehumanizing these people, because that's what they're doing to us. And so I know it's very easy. It's very easy to throw these slang words around, these words that really don't mean a whole lot. They really have no firm definition. but I think we need to stop that and come together.
Well, that's an awkward transition because you have been the object of some of these slime techniques, as were. I have to say I was rather shocked. I never knew this when I found really that the only local paper in Lancaster, which, like you said, was once one of the most conservative, I think in many ways is still one of the more conservative areas in the country. That paper, for lack of better term, was very secular, right, and very left wing and very woke in many respects. And I understand you've you've gotten some pushback from the legacy media because you started this paper that's going against the grain. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we have received a lot of pushback, obviously, because most of it has been due to maybe being new at this and not understanding media, maybe not making the wisest choices as we were starting up or as we were planning in the planning stages of this. Maybe it is because we did not first go into it with eyes wide open. Maybe we did make some choices that we shouldn't have done. However, that being said, yes. But I don't think it's about us. They don't hate me. They don't hate Dave Stoltzfus.
Sure.
They hate the idea of truth. They do not. We need to understand. They do not hate Dave Stoltzfus. They do not hate Dr. Turley. What they hate is truth. So if you base your life on lies and deception and money and power, then truth will always be the last thing that you choose.
Right.
In the legacy media, I always say there's room for them. There's room for us. If you don't like us, that's fine.
Right.
Why? What's your problem? If you don't like us, that's fine. I think there's room for them. If they want to be here in the county and they want to give their views, great. I don't understand why they would feel threatened by us. They shouldn't feel threatened by us. We're a small organization. We have very little reach. So what is it that they don't like? And the only thing I can say is truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so fascinating because when you read the early church fathers, it's one of the motifs that keeps recurring about the cross, because the cross is a mirror. It's a mirror to who we really are. We think we're really cool. We think we got it all together. We think in our own narratives, our own personal narratives, we're always the hero. We're always the good guy. We're always the protagonist. But when we look at a cross, we look at that symbol, we see an actual reflection of who we really are. And who are we? Well, our hearts are in such a state that when truth comes into our midst, we crucify it. That's who we are by nature. We mock it. We ridicule, we spit on it, and we crucify it. And so truth can only appear as cruciform in a world of lies and deceit. And then the beauty, of course, is then the resurrection reveals the God who would submit himself to that kind of humiliation. And Allah would never do this. I hope that's not too controversial for YouTube here, but I mean, Zeus would never die for you. Even Plato's conception of truth, goodness, and beauty would never die for you. What kind of God would subject himself to that? It's the God of infinite and eternal love. And then the resurrection is the unmistakable proclamation that the love is inextinguishable. It can't be killed. It can't be destroyed. The more you try to destroy it, the more you magnify the love. That's the amazing thing, right? So what you're saying here just resonates so much, I think, with just the richness of Christian frames of reference that are able to handle hate in a way that doesn't seek to cancel, but seeks to redeem, which is a whole different thing than what we're seeing today. So obviously, starting this paper has taught you a lot about what it means to stand up for truth.
Yeah. There's many days we have said, why are we doing this? What are we crazy? Are we we're out of our minds, you know?
Yes, you're fools, fools for
We
Christ.
are fools.
Yeah,
Fools.
yeah.
At the end of the day, we think that it's a needed aspect in the county. We think that Lancaster County, there are certain people in the county who still want this kind of paper. They really don't want this paper. They really don't want a paper that glorifies transgenderism, homosexuality, the social wokeness of this world. Again, I'm using these terms, but they want a wholesome paper, a paper that will not only talk about the values of our community, but about what's going on. And there's a lot of people who want that.
Right.
So we think there's something here for everyone, and we would love to cross the aisle. We don't understand. Again, we'll get into our controversy that we don't understand why we can't have the conversations anymore.
Give it, yeah, because we're running out. Yeah, we're running out of time, Dave. Give us a real quick snippet. What is this controversy that you're experiencing right now?
Well, in partnership with the Mid-Atlantic Reformation Society, the Mid-Atlantic Reformation Society is hosting a meeting on the Pennsylvania Constitution and on the original one with the religious clause in it. And our editor-in-chief, Chris Hume, is speaking at that event. He was asked to speak. He was asked to put on there. He was put on there to present a view on the Constitution. This went out via social media, through the newspaper, and other avenues. And the event was to be held at the Tide House in Lidditz. And in the course of 72 hours, it went from emails and crazy, things on Facebook and other social media platforms to, we can't have, this isn't going to work. So Mars, as an organization, they decided that they were going to pull it from that location. And things have died down for the Tide House. They've lost some employees, they've lost some vendors and some customers, I think. But at the end, things have died down a little bit for them. But the event will still be going on. The event has been rescheduled. To my understanding, it's been rescheduled at another location for next week, next Thursday, June 23rd. And this is a simple discussion. From our understanding, we don't understand why anyone would have or be opposed to us talking about a historical document. We've had people say, well, would you be okay if the Muslims had a meeting like this in Lancaster? And I said, if we knew about it, we would want to go there and engage, have a conversation, drink a beer over this. What do we need to do to talk? Why can't we talk? What has happened that we have become so polarized here in America that we cannot talk across the aisle? What is it? So that's where we're at. We were the Lancaster Patriot was there as having a speaker there. The Mid-Atlantic Reformation Society, obviously, that's what they do. They're a conference and worldview organization. So it was simply that. It was
Right.
a place to talk about different worldviews.
Right. Right. Yeah. But it's drawing from frames of reference that unfortunately, yeah, because of the secularization and then the alternative, uh, Jordan Peterson refers to ideology as crippled religion, sort of the crippled religious substitute. So I think the secularization with then the creating the vacuum, the values vacuum, and then the values vacuum being filled with activism. I mean, so I love how you began this whole interview saying, I'm not an activist, I'm a Christian. Well, that's, yeah, activism, political activism that we saw in the 20th century, heightening in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Political activism became the alternative religion. That's what it became.
It did.
There's lots of testimonies out there, people kind of trying different religions, getting Christianity, but then they found the true meaning of life, which was political activism. And it's always very secularized, very left wing, very woke. So that's what you're facing, this kind of this crippled religion, this alternative religion. And you step on a hornet's nest with certain frames of reference that just trigger them. And there's, I don't know, there's no basis of talking because activism tends to work in totalizing categories. So they're not interested in say American rights or constitutional rights. They're interested in human rights. And so there's no basis of dissent from that. If you say, well, wait a minute now, that's kind of an autonomous secular, construct. What are you doing? All of a sudden they turn, so you're anti-human? You're anti-human rights, or they're all for women's rights. It's never wives' rights or daughters' rights. It's women's, this general category. So if I say, well, I don't know if I really care for what are you, anti-woman now? So there's either you're with them or you're against them. There's just no. They're talking about an antithesis, right? I mean, that's really what you're seeing. So yeah, go for it.
I mean, where I'm at is, they want to talk about people's rights. We can't even begin that conversation until we acknowledge 50, 60, 70 million dead babies.
Right. There you go.
We can't even have that conversation on people's rights or human rights or any other rights. We have taken 60, 70 million babies and worship them at the altar of Baal. And how do we expect to ever have a conversation? So let's forget about this human rights thing and let's talk about the issues that are at hand. That's what I would like to, that's what I'm proposing.
Yeah, the good news is the abortion issue, particularly with the revelation of Roe v. Wade, looking like it's mercifully going to be overturned. The good news is that we're finding they don't have the frames of reference to be able to appeal to anymore. So the arguments for Roe v. Wade that were big in the 70s and 80s and 90s, women's rights, my body, my choice. Right. those have all been abdicated. They've all been right, blended together with other frames of reference, and then they've lost their power. They just it's probably actually a very good time for a conversation. Where can people, speaking of, where can they go to subscribe to the Lancaster Patriot paper?
So www.thelancasterpatriot.com is where you can go, and then in the top right you can subscribe to it. So yeah, we're always looking for supporters, whether they're subscribers or if you don't want to subscribe, a letter, so we're looking for, we like to hear what we're doing, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. And we recognize that it comes with the territory. It does come with the territory, and I'm sure you're very well aware of that.
It sure does. That's right. That's right. Media does. It is interactive today more than ever. No question about that. But yeah, Dave, got to thank you, the Lancaster Patriot, for sponsoring our upcoming in-person premiere of our premiere in Lancaster itself. I know many of those of you who are watching have gotten tickets for it. Like I said, we're having to get a bigger venue, so I can't thank you all for that. If you haven't, make sure you click on the link below. Subscribe to Lancaster Patriots. Subscribe, or also be able to get some, if there's some carryover tickets, you might still be able to get those. We look forward to seeing you in July. Dave will be there. The future Pennsylvania Governor, Doug Mastriano, will be there. So it's going to be a great, great time. So Dave, thank you so much for what you're doing. Look forward to seeing you in July. God bless you and the Lancaster Patriot.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. You have a wonderful day.
You too.
Take care.